everybody. Reporting to you again from the Glamour City, Hollywood.
Yeah, so designing for the machine,
Yes.
and what does that look like? And so it's a fascinating topic. I haven't even really thought through that as well yet, but it's an interesting thing to think about that 10 years from now, the persona may be a machine, and it's kind of a faceless AI representation, but it embodies all of these. And as we know, a persona is a summary of all these characteristics. It could just be an AI agent, will be the persona instead of so and so from this particular area is this old with this job. It could be AI the agent, and this is what his or her or its characteristics are. It's fascinating.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Today, I'm joined by Paul Stonick, Vice President of SCADpro. Welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Scott. Pleasure being here.
So, Paul, let's first start with a little bit of your background and what you have done over the last several decades.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I have 2 decades of what I like to call tradigital experience in brand creative, visual, and UX design. I started in web design back when the magic was written in the mid-90s and then pivoted to UX design in 2012. 18 years of those have been in e-commerce primarily, so early days, pioneer, before Amazon was a thing. Fashion, beauty, home improvement, automotive, banking, entertainment, 15 years in executive design leader roles. I work for a small company called the Home Depot. You probably heard of it. The 5th largest e-commerce site, and a mobile app where we grew from 700 million to 2 billion over 3 years. My work has been featured in multiple news outlets, research organizations like Forrester and L2 Gartner, national television spots, and multiple Apple WWDC keynotes. After 20 years in large corporate organizations and fighting corporate obstructionism, I was part of the entrepreneur exodus and joined an automotive startup. Leading design and product. That startup got acquired, which was a wonderful day. Several months later, I got laid off, which was a terrible day. And that was really the beginning of the tech layoffs several years ago. So as I thought about Act 3 of my career and what I wanted to do next, there was an opportunity to be a partner at Savannah College Art and Design and leading SCADpro, which is our in-house design research and innovation studio. And so now grooming the next generation of design leaders further up in the funnel at the higher education level, well, that's really meaningful and exciting work. And we're doing some really cool things at SCADpro. And as you can see on the wall behind me, these are some of the brand partners we work with. So that's a little bit about me and my experience.
All right, super, great. Thank you so much for that. Tell us a little bit about SCAD and what it stands for. Again, my understanding it was founded in 1978. And since starting with just 71 students and 8 degree programs, it's now, I guess, closer to 18,000 students across a number of different locations, including France.
That's exactly right. So Savannah College Art and Design was founded in 1978, opened up in 1979. Almost 18,000 students now between Atlanta, Lacoste, Savannah, and then we also have an online program called SCAD Now. And we're really recognized as one of the higher education leaders in art and design. We offer more than 100 academic degree programs and more than 40 majors. And the work that we do at SCAD is really the intersection of art, design, and business. We don't really consider ourselves to be in art schools. We consider ourselves to be a creative university. Everything that we do has some sort of business component intertwined into the education. And in a recent study, 99% of SCAD graduates were employed, pursuing further education, or both within 10 months of graduation. And so that's what I love about being here, is that being part of that opportunity for students to really think about SCAD as their stepping stone into their creative profession or the finishing school before they go into their creative profession is a wonderful thing for us.
And how does SCADpro work within the college organization?
Yeah, so the SCADpro is a division of the university. So it's our in-house design, research, and innovation studio where we partner with big name brands to solve real-world problems through design. 45% of our partners come from the Forbes top 100 most valuable companies. And over the course of the 10 weeks, which is on the quarter system for SCAD, partners will come to us and want to solve a particular problem, whether that's digital, physical, phygital. Now, with 100 academic degree programs and 40 majors, we can do a lot, but we also bring a very diverse perspective in terms of 120 countries where students come from in all 50 states. So unlike other agencies, in a lot of ways, we work with the client all the way through the process and through the ideation, through the creative process, and make sure that they have buy-in and visibility into what students are creating. So it's a wonderful opportunity for the students to take an elective as a junior, senior, or grad student with a 3.25 GPA or higher. Think of it like an inside-out internship where students have direct contact with the company over the course of 10 weeks. And what we love is that it really gives them the opportunity to get hired into these companies. So nearly 300 students have been hired directly into a lot of the companies you see here on the wall. And that's exactly what our mission is preparing students for their creative professions.
So as I'm looking at the list of some of the brands that you mentioned and the ones behind you, what's the incentive for them? Is it the fact that they're looking as a pipeline to talent pool to insource into the organization, or is it more of the fact that it is heavily discounted relative to, let's say, professional agencies that are out there?
Yes to both. So certainly they're looking for a talent pool and hiring creatives into their teams, which is wonderful. They're also getting a deep discount compared to what you would go to for an RGA or a Frog or a Big Spaceship or any other big agency. However, you're not getting student work. You're getting agency level work in terms of what's being delivered. You're getting Gen Z mindset. So you automatically get that in terms of the types of thinking, but you also get unconstrained thinking as well, because they're not jaded by the corporate obstructionism or brand guidelines or anything else. They're coming in with fresh ideas and new ways of thinking. So that's terrific. That's really our secret sauce in terms of what we're delivering to these clients is this new way of thinking, but also breaking through some of those barriers. And in a lot of ways, teaching companies how to be creative again.
Now, of course, design thinking has been very much in fashion, vogue for the last 20 years. I would say it was kind of at the peak of it probably maybe 10 years ago. Although we have started to, I think, start thinking a little bit differently about it. But I want to, well, first take a step back is when we think about great designers, you have people like Johnny Ive, formerly with Apple, and more recently, I think in the last several months, his predecessor that was leading the design for Apple also left to join his outfit as well. What do you think is happening from a kind of a big perspective around design, and why are some of these prominent people leaving to start their own studios?
I think it's similar to what I expressed earlier about the entrepreneur exodus. I think it's about leaving corporations so they can move in a more agile way, uppercase A and lowercase a, in terms of development, so they can move with speed, have less obstructionism, trying to get things in the market faster. That would be my guess. And that was what happened to me is like I wanted to move at a better clip, but also be able to get something into market in a faster way. So that would be my theory in terms of why people are leaving is that they're tired of the obstructionism. They want to present the outcome, not the idea. They want to actually show something that's valuable and provides an outcome to a particular user.
Understood. Before I get into some of the AI-related topics that I had prefaced before the start of this interview, let's talk a little bit about the curriculum. How do you equip your students, and how has the curriculum and experiences changed over the years since you've been there?
I've been with SCAD for about a year and a half. And so the curriculum is essentially the same in terms of what we're doing and what I inherited. We're still using the 10-week quarter system, which is what we're based on, but we're using design thinking as the tool for students to solve the problem. So really going through the research, the ideation, the prototyping, testing, and delivery of the product and the IP, which is delivered to the companies when we're finished. It really is about marrying creativity and critical thinking skills together. So it requires the students to generate a lot of ideas, but also become comfortable with failure. And so failure doesn't mean that the game is over. It just means that we're going to try again with experience. So it forces them to keep their minds open, try out a lot of ideas early on, and not so you don't get invested in one, because a lot of times your first idea is not generally the best. So how do we actually process and harness that creativity through inquiry? And so that translated into my personal career as well, too, as we think about the power of design thinking, because not only in the classroom, but even in corporate environments, it's inclusive. It's very powerful in terms of bringing everybody together on a project. It creates empowerment. It allows us to teach others to be creative again. And that's really where you start bringing design to a strategic level. It can solve anything: digital, physical, phygital. I mean, 3 examples. We just launched David Yurman's holiday campaign Create Joy, Give David Yerman, which was a full XR video stage where we shot it and delivering that particular asset. We did the AR graphics for Super Bowl 58. So when you saw the touchdown graphic and the player cards and the player comparison, the Vegas Oasis, that was all done by SCAD students here at SCADpro. And most recently, we just launched a line of sneakers with Sam Edelman and Nordstrom's, which are in market now. So design can solve anything. We can do anything, but I also see design thinking as a secret weapon and as a Trojan horse, where you can really create change within an organization because it's about changing behaviors and mindsets. And perfect example of that is when I was working at Home Depot and scaling design thinking across an organization that was traditionally merchant led. We had a facilitation with our C-suite, so no pressure. I've got my C-suite in the room, and I'm telling my CFO, Richard McPhail, you need to push past the obvious. And he looks at me and he's like, we should be working like this all the time. I said, I know. And that's the power where we snuck it in like a Trojan horse and became a new way of thinking across the organization.
Understood. Now, let me ask you, again, I think this is kind of the elephant in the room, so to speak, is that how are you preparing your students for a very dynamically changing world where they get out and they find out the opportunities that they were expecting may not be there because of something called generative AI, or more broadly, fast changing artificial intelligence landscape?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a hot topic within the university. And of course, it's a line item in every strategy in every company right now. The question is, what do we do with it? And so while I think it's the Wild West right now, and we certainly haven't had the iPhone moment where everybody starts to, in design, where everybody starts to mobilize around the thing that's going to change. The thing with design and designers is that we're adaptable. And we're seeing AI as a tool right now. And we've all made the progression from the early days of Photoshop to Sketch/Envision to Figma, and now it's AI. And what are we using between Midjourney and DALL-E and Adobe making big pushes in AI? We did a project with Adobe over the winter exploring AI opportunities within their creative suite. We know it's a thing out there. What it's going to be, we don't know, but it is a big topic within the university. In fact, we just had an AI summit a couple of weeks ago where we had leaders from Google and Netflix and other big companies coming in and talking about the state of the union and what does that mean for education. In my opinion, I envision it as a particular minor or a particular major that maybe we run across the university. It's something that we have to use as a companion species right now. It's interesting. It's a definite tool that we have to start looking at. However, I don't think it's going to solve all the problems in terms of understanding human nature. And when we're solving problems, you have to understand wants, needs, frustrations, behaviors, and those nuances that AI just doesn't have yet. And so I don't think it's going to replace it, but right now I think it's going to be more of a companion, taking away some of those manual, menial tasks that you can just automate all the way through, which we used to do with scripts years ago. Now it's going to be AI replacing it. So it's certainly a topic. What we're going to do with it, we're not sure yet.
So I think because I've been covering this topic around AI for so many years, I have a kind of a spectrum of perspectives. One is that of exactly what you're saying. It's another tool set to add and certainly help speed up or accelerate some of the rudimentary or painstaking work, let's say. But at the same time, the concern that I have is the people that are making decisions, the people that are responsible for effectively the labor force, the ones that are overseeing from a financial perspective. And we've seen it. We've seen last year and this year, not just tech, but other industries where there's been massive layoffs. And some may assert that it's because of AI, but I think it's, of course, more to do with profitability and increasing the earnings report. But nonetheless, those that are making those types of decisions are not intimately familiar with design or design thinking. And from their perspective, they think that it's perfectly okay to replace or reduce the headcount of designers because there is different forms of Gen AI that can process images, videos, and even lip syncing and everything else these days.
Yeah, I've seen some of those clips as well, too, where lip syncing, it's astounding in terms of the work, but scary as hell. And the beginning of Skynet from Terminator as well. It's really it's very troubling in many ways. But to your point, with the layoffs we've seen over the last couple of years, that was growth at all costs during the pandemic. And it was very short-sighted, and a lot of us are now paying the price, and the sins of the past are coming back to haunt us in terms of all the layoffs that are happening with AI and thinking it's going to be the silver bullet. in terms of replacing or creating more efficiency or ROI. And I do believe there will be ROI. Like we said earlier, it'll remove some of the day-to-day menial manual tasks, which will increase speed to market. That's ROI. But I think in the problems with some of these companies is where they're not design led, they're thinking of it as a silver bullet because design is not integrated into the company at the top level. Mm-hmm. So design's reporting into engineering or reporting into product. It's not sitting at the same level as everybody else. So when design is not at that level, that means they don't understand the business value of design. And as leaders within design, like myself, it's about pushing that boulder up the hill that I've been doing for the last 20 years, that design provides value in terms of showing the math. How does it affect your bottom line? How does it affect the P&L? Once I start speaking the language of math and business to my leaders and understanding what design can do, then it becomes a much different conversation. And how does AI fit into that? That's when they start listening, because now I'm talking about what matters to them. So I start to politically disarm the conversation around this is what design does. We're not just a beauty contest and making things pretty. We're actually designing value for your organization. And we all know the companies that are leading by design, Airbnb, Nike, Apple, they're leading the S&P by 228% for the last 15 years. So some companies are starting to get on board, but they're going to be companies that are going to be legacy all the time. I mentioned Home Depot earlier. They are going to be a merchant organization forever, full stop. But that was the purpose of design thinking, was to change the thinking on how things can get done and how problems can be solved.
Now, one of the things you said earlier is the fact that there's this critical thinking, and some people that are maybe not as intimately familiar with design thinking or design approach may think that it's more aesthetics than the actual critical thinking that's required. So to that end, one of the areas that's, of course, very hot is prompt engineering. There was even a recent article that I think came out of MIT that said that prompt engineering will eventually go away altogether as these systems just become smarter. But nonetheless, let's stay with prompt engineering as an example. How can designers assist with that perhaps maybe we would have thought more of a business analyst or data scientist would be involved?
That's an interesting question, because I'm quoting a good friend of mine. The worst thing about design thinking is that the word design is in the title. And it's really a human-centered approach to problem solving. And like I said earlier, understanding the wants, needs, frustrations, and behaviors of a user. And there is no machine that's going to do that right now. And that's where designers come in, is that they're leading with empathy. I don't know of any sort of AI machine right now that has empathy at this point. And so that's a very human nature. So that's where we can help prompt engineers in understanding human nature and solving the right problem. It's not about what we can do, it's about what we should do. So bringing that type of ideation and mindset to the table and influencing the type of prompts that go in will hopefully create a better product as well. And that's where companies are leading, because they understand their user, they understand their personas, they understand the behaviors. I think that's really valuable information. Who doesn't want to know about their customers or their users?
So again, I'm in complete agreement when it comes to personas, customer journeys, and human-centric design. Now, the challenge is that the ones that are funding and creating these new forms of technology, some of them, there's a camp where there's actually a specific terminology for them, that for them, it's enhanced, elevated intelligence at all costs, and it doesn't have to be carbon-based. So in other words, they're basically saying they're okay with artificial general intelligence, and it's okay if machines and systems supersede or exceed the capability of humans. That's perfectly fine. We're actually promoting and fostering whatever ends up being the smartest, most intelligent thing, versus having a bias towards carbon human life form. What do you think about that? And how does, in that context, change when the human center doesn't really apply because there is no human involved anymore?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And while I love innovation and I love technology and I love moving forward, those are all great and important things, but at what cost and what are we sacrificing? And so I don't think I've seen anything right now where we understand what the trade-offs are. I think we've heard the draconian version that AI is going to end all mankind. We've seen those articles already, right? But what are the real trade-offs in terms of what AI is going to do? Does it cause a reduction in force? Does it cause other things to go out of business? I think we have to be very, very clear and honest with each other that if you're going to do something like AI moving forward, what are you breaking and touching on the other side? And nobody's really documented or illustrated or written about it. Like, what are the trade-offs to humans if we keep moving forward in this direction?
I'm just going to add a little commentary that I've been itching to say for months, if not years, is that I foresee in the future, and it may just be maybe a decade or two, is that at some point all of us will have our own AI or AI systems. However, just like tools and knowledge, everybody can have more or less the same tools, including, let's say, devices. But the ones that are more resource enabled, the ones that are better capitalized and more knowledgeable are then going to be able to use these agents to produce bigger outcomes. And in some cases, they're going to be able to actually run entire corporations or organizations just with AI and robotics as well. In that context, where do human-centered design fit in when we're not really working directly, but we're allowing our AI and robots to work on our behalf, but the yield or the results or the revenue that they can generate is still limited by either our knowledge or the capital that we can bring and deploy.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought through that in terms of, if it does get that far, where is it automating in terms of understanding human behavior as you get into tools like user testing and things like that? Does it come automatic? And I've actually seen demos this week where user testing, understanding human behaviors, and is using AI to help create prompts. And it's very early days, but in a lot of ways, AI is having a conversation with the user about the path and the journey forward. So I see it integrating with these tools. It's at very early days in terms of the technology, but I see it plugging into a lot of these systems that we use to understand how does this system affect a particular user? How does it affect general heuristics? What is the reaction? Does it increase time on task or whatever it is? It's already happening, and I think it's going to get to a point where you could probably just push a button and you can run an automatic test, and eventually it will understand the themes, patterns, behaviors, which we do as humans through contextual inquiry or other research methods. You're going to see that come out and say, here's what we found and synthesize through our findings. I think it's coming.
Yeah. And going back to the example of Home Depot is that aside from the user experience aspects of it is there's a lot of algorithm that's behind it. So the way the metadata gets embedded and rich within Home Depot as an example, and the way the crawlers or search engines, let's say Google and others, are able to then identify and look through those different types of metadata, whether it's structure, semi or unstructured, for example. And where I'm going with this question is that at some point in the future, when we think about user-centered design, maybe it's not just human-centered, but it's also machine-centered. In other words, we have to design with the possibility, knowing that the actual users of these types of experiences and journeys may be AI agents and not humans.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, so designing for the machine and
Yes.
what does that look like? And so it's a fascinating topic. I haven't even really thought through that as well yet. But it's an interesting thing to think about that 10 years from now, the persona may be a machine and it's kind of a faceless AI representation, but it embodies all of these. And as we know, a persona is a summary of all these characteristics. It could just be an AI agent, will be the persona instead of so and so from this particular area is this old with this job. It could be AI the agent, and this is what his or her or its characteristics are. It's fascinating.
It is. It is. I'm going to actually bring it down back to earth. Again, we've been talking about things that's fairly abstract. It's interesting, but nonetheless, it is something that I think all of us should be evaluating, critically thinking about. But let's talk about something that's very practical, that's right in front of us. I believe just today there was a visual that came out on media that showed a image that was shared on social media by, I believe, a symphony, an orchestra, let's say. And it showed a couple that's holding hands, and it shows like they're having a great time. But seated behind them is the actual orchestra in each of those seats. And the author was talking about the fact that how could this entity, this organization that is well respected and reputable, simply just put some AI generated image out there on social media when you have something that's completely strange. I mean, the couple that's holding their hands together, there's not only one set, there's actually two sets. And I think his pants transitions into a dress and just really bizarre things. So you got some practical issues. And then earlier this week, there was, of course, discussion around the fact that a lot of these image generated systems are still having issues with text. So the image may be kind of passable to some extent, although it may not make sense from a physics or logic perspective. But when it comes to putting any type of text on these images or videos, they're still getting it wrong. What are your thoughts about that? And how should designers and your students think about that as they interact with some of these limitations?
They're already doing it, and they're teaching us as well too. And to that point, I sat in on a graduate copywriting class last week where they were presenting ideas or pitches to 3 different companies. I won't name the brands, but the pitches were, the majority of them were done with image generating technology and a lot of AI. And one of them, particularly for a shoe brand, was so good, I thought it was real photography. I said, "Where did you shoot these? And what photography did you use? What camera?" But I started digging into it, like, how did you actually create these? Like, oh, these were all AI generated. I said, "You're kidding." So the fidelity of these that came out were so good. And also they went in and did a little bit of Photoshop and design and touch up as well, putting the shoes actually on the figures that were in there. It was so good and so seamless, I couldn't tell. That's how good it was. And so they're teaching us what's happening and what's the state of the art. It's so good. We want to bring it to the shoe brand and pitch it to them saying, this is a marketing campaign that you can run right now that will appeal to an older generation. It was fascinating. So the students are already using it. They're already tinkering. They're already experimenting. Like I said earlier, what is the thing though? What is the one that we're all going to triangulate around and say, this is the tool that we're going to use going forward that helps create quality and also creates an emotional connection with a particular brand or a company or a user, because there is an emotional connection in what they pitched for this particular shoe company. I felt it and I saw it and I related to it, but the images were so good that I thought they were real.
Yeah. Let's look at the other side of this aspect, which is the attribution or copyright or the intellectual property protection. So again, not all of your students are necessarily creators of design per se, but let's say for those that are original artists of some sort, for them, what's being taught and how are they going to navigate the future as their artwork that potentially goes out into public domain, maybe even private, still ends up getting swallowed by some sort of AI systems that are so hungry, they need not just billions and billions, but eventually trillions of parameters.
Yeah, like I said earlier, everything that SCAD does in terms of preparing students for the creative profession has some sort of business component wound into it. So understanding how they're going to run their business, own their business, as we think about legal, copyright, trademark, NDAs, et cetera, how do we build all that in? So hopefully they're thinking through that when they start releasing into the masses. Now, if it gets swallowed up by an AI machine and spit out as something else, hopefully that there is some sort of tracking system, if you will, or some sort of way to understand, hey, that's actually protected by copyright and trademark. You should not be using that type of artwork. Hopefully there would be a system down the road that helps protect them from that type of swiping of their original artwork and IP.
Well, I mean, there are things that has a potential for poisoning the algorithms, but at this point, I don't think we've actually worked out anything around copyright or compensation. So it's a big issue.
Exactly.
I want to talk about a metaphor, which is over the last several decades, we've seen a significant precipitous drop in people that's going into fields like accounting, as an example. I'm just using that as an example. What is this possible future where some of the young people, maybe they're still in elementary school, maybe they're in high school, as they're thinking about their future and seeing what's happening and the rapid changes in the versions of these types of AI systems that are out there, they're rethinking, is design the right field for me? And certainly for the other flip side, from your perspective, as well as for corporations, is the retention strategies for keeping top talent when, they're thinking, my gosh, is this a field that I need to stay in?
Yeah, look, creatives are the ones that survived. We are the kids that survived and came through the other end. And so whether that we were affected by jobs, education, socioeconomic, we're the students and kids that survived coming through the system. For them, they really need to think about what matters to them, because a lot of the work that these students do when we think design is a very broad term. In terms of 100-degree programs that we have, you're talking about fine art, photography, illustration, sequential art, film and television, dramatic writing. There are a lot of things that still need a human touch. Now, AI, as we've seen, became a hot topic in the film and television industry, where we had the writer strike and the actor strike and a lot of concerns about AI taking their jobs. So I think it's going to be interesting, like we said, because will AI become a thing in terms of a companion species and major or minor within a university? I have to imagine a lot of other universities are thinking the same thing. So when companies start to think about AI as their tool going forward or potentially replacing other jobs, retention strategies have to be around trust. And that's both emotional trust and practical trust. Emotional trust is, hey, I've got your back, I've got your career in mind. And practical trust is, I know you're going to show up and I'm going to get things done. But a lot of this goes back to human-centered belief, is that companies now, especially post-pandemic, where we've dealt with loneliness and mental health and struggles and everything else, people don't care about some of the perks that companies used to offer of like free lunches and bagels in the break room and hoverboards and ping pong tables and nonsense like that. That is not culture. People want clear career paths. They want goals. They want to be able to contribute to the big picture. And they want to feel a human connection with their companies, especially what we're seeing with Gen Z, where they really care about values and authenticity and being clear and sustainability and other things that are important to them. These better be clear values to a company, and they just can't be words on a wall. They have to mean something. And in bonus points, if the first letter of each word spells another word, it better mean something and not just be words on a wall, in terms of how do we empower people? How do we take care of our people? How do you put your people first in terms of human connection and care?
Beautiful. So with that, I have been joined by Paul Stonick, Vice President at SCADpro. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you, Scott.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.